Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the MLB Deeper Dive. The first time back on any form of deeper dive in, well, more than 4 months. We went April, we went May, we went through July, we went through June, we went through most of July. I'm Dave Loughran, with me, Adam Scherer. Happy to have everyone with us back for the first one in about 4.5 months. Adam, it's almost foreign to me to be doing this. March 11th, March 10th would have been the last time we did this, and that feels like forever ago.
Yeah, it feels really weird. It's almost like first day of school feeling, like I'm going through my baseball stuff and like trying to prep for the show and just like remembering all these things that I'm forgetting that I because we haven't done it in so long.
It's funny. I had a spreadsheet and I looked at it and I was like, I have no idea how I did any of this. And then it was like a second nature thing where I just, like, my hand just kind of did what, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't even, it was second nature in a way. And I think the same thing happens with the researching process and the lineup building process. You think like, it's going to take me a little while to remember this, but once you start, it's all that muscle memory coming right back to you like nothing.
Yeah, I'm doing the spreadsheet thing right now because I wasn't sure if I was going to play this slate because of the weather, but I decided to go ahead and register just in case. So now I'm going through like last year's baseball spreadsheet, trying to update everything and remember what I even have in here.
So we've got 2 games today, and on top of it being only a 2-game slate, we've got some serious weather concerns. On top of some serious weather concerns and it being only a 2-game slate, Juan Soto catches the Rona. So that is not great news, Adam. I think we'll spend a little bit of time on that right now, right out of the gate. We've got an hour to kill on 2 games. Anyway, coronavirus, tested positive, Juan Soto. Now, what they're saying is that like he was around teammates and he could have been positive, or probably was positive while he had it. But you made a good point that as far as NBA goes, Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert were the only players that had it, and they were inside of the same locker room together. And Rudy Gobert was actively trying to give the coronavirus to his teammates.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously just kind of a wait and see now to hopefully we don't get more positive tests out of the Nats, because that would be a pretty disappointing way to start the season, obviously. But it's, I guess like some silver lining or reason for optimism, I guess, is that if you go back and look at the beginning of all this, the beginning of the sports lockdown, when you had Rudy Gobert test positive, no one was taking any precautions really then. He certainly wasn't, based on reports coming out of that locker room. Everything they did was indoors, and you still only had him and Mitchell get sick. So hopefully it just stays confined to Juan Soto.
Yeah, and we'll find out. Look, it's a big hit. It's a really big hit to this Washington baseball team. But I think, get it?
Yeah.
I think you know, they do have enough talent. They should be able to persevere through this. But man, if there was one player in your starting lineup that you didn't want to have absent for 2 weeks, it would be what? Juan Soto or Trey Turner?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Soto, I think, is pretty much the answer. You know, Turner obviously up there too. I feel bad for the season-long players that, you know, finally you're getting the season going. You're so excited about your team, and then you have what clearly was a first-round pick just disappear.
Yeah, and the line earlier, Yankees were minus 137. They're minus 162 now. So let's jump into it. We'll start, however, with the weather. You can go to Awesemo's weather. We have the weather Twitter account that should help you out quite a bit if you're looking through all of that and trying to sort through this mess. But what are you seeing right now? I usually don't ask you to give me your weather takes. Neither of us are an authority on the subject. But because there's only 2 games, any opinion is a good opinion, at least until it isn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's supposed to rain, I think, in the afternoon, early evening. Whenever it's, you know how it is, you don't live too far from the area either. Whenever it's hot here, there's storms that pop up pretty regularly. So I think it just ends up coming down to, is it storms that are rolling through the area and then getting out and they're able to play, or is it prolonged rain? You know, hopefully the former.
So again, at Awesemo Weather, Alex Baker runs that himself. He just tweeted 22 seconds ago, Adam, the DC weather is looking a lot better. I'm not worrying about any weather risk tonight. So that's good.
That's good to hear. Yeah, because like I said, the weather had looked pretty dicey early on in the day, and so I wasn't going to deal with it. And then I was like, it's still the first day. I want to play. I'll just, waste my time and see what happens. But yeah, so hopefully it clears up. That's good to hear.
This morning on the Strategy Show, which you can listen to Monday through Saturday at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, I had mentioned in the conversation with Josh as we got started or as we got underway that, and I think he mentioned it as well, that he might have mentioned it first, as a matter of fact, that with 65, 66 days to get in 60 games, these teams are pretty likely going to do anything they can to play. And I think ultimately, it doesn't matter that there aren't any fans there, but a team like Washington, knowing that they have good players on them, knowing that they have Max Scherzer, we know the shit they've pulled in the past as far as postponing games when they didn't have their aces on the bump. But with Garrett Cole and Max Scherzer, I do feel like they're not going to try to play unless they think they have a large enough window. I'm not sure they're going to want to risk on a 60-game slate or on a 60-game schedule getting only 3 or 4 innings out of Scherzer and Cole. That would be my one concern.
Not to mention you just lost Juan Soto. So if they could somehow get this game rescheduled in 15 days, then you get him back for it's 2% of your season almost each game. So, obviously I assume that they'll just play it straight. And if it's not raining or they can play, they'll play. And they probably, want to get the game in. It's obviously the first game of the season and all that. But if you are just kind of looking for narratives and considering the Nats history, your point about Scherzer, I think, not wanting to have him limited and then obviously just losing their best player gives them, again, ulterior motives if they go that route.
Yeah, I think Alex is right, though. It appears to have, you know what? It looks like it's cleared up. We're not even supposed to get any rain until around 11 p.m. So
yeah, that's good.
Fingers crossed. Hopefully we're in good shape. Let's talk some baseball then. So Washington at home against the Yankees. Two really good teams, World Series champs, and a Yankees team that played injured for the first, felt like 80 games of the season. Almost everyone was hurt, or at least.
And Stanton missed almost the whole year.
Yeah. Stanton was out. Judge missed time. I think LeMahieu missed some time.
Andujar was out for a long time.
Miguel Andujar was out. Yeah. Most of these guys missed time. So now they come back. They're fully healthy. They're much bigger favorites than they were earlier in the day, assuming Juan Soto has some effect there. Minus 162, Nationals plus 149. As far as the run totals go, Yankees run total, and this is why I don't know how much of an effect it did have. Vegas has the Yankees at 4.3. They were down to 4.0 runs, and Washington's up to 3.3 runs. So both run totals going up. It's a super hot day, going to be 83 degrees, 71% humidity. Let's talk about pitching first. We'll start with Max Scherzer, who on DraftKings is only $8,600. Right now, he's got projected ownership through the roof, 76.2%. And then over on FanDuel, he's significantly more expensive at 10.7, but also garnering 47% ownership, the highest of any pitcher right now on this slate.
Yeah, so I think, obviously it's a tough Yankees lineup that he's going up against, but if you're looking for silver lining, you do have 6 right-handed hitters in that lineup. We know that Scherzer is good, very good against lefties, but against righties, close to unhittable. If you're just looking at, against certain-handedness, one of the best pitchers in baseball against right-handed hitters, if not the best. So I think that plays to his favor. And then you also do have, while it's a really dangerous lineup, you have a lot of right-handed strikeouts there, particularly with Judge and Stanton both hitting in the top 4, Gary Sanchez hitting 6th. So I think it's a high upside spot for Scherzer, even though the lineup is so dangerous. The flip side of that, though, is that, and obviously there's going to be ownership everywhere on a 2-game slate, but if you're getting, 74% of the field going to Scherzer on DraftKings and 47% on FanDuel, the Yankees are a pretty appealing team to be using as leverage.
Yeah, and I mentioned the same thing this morning. It feels like a spot where Scherzer could come out there and be surprisingly dominant. 36% strikeout rate against righties last year is an insane number. You mentioned that the majority of this lineup is right-handed. He allowed a 114 ISO to righties last year, 0.65 home runs per 9 with a 0.8 whip. These are very, very, very good numbers. A 2.2 xFIP across the board, every number against righties. astutely stated, he's close to unhittable against righties. How many home runs did he allow to righties last year? Only 7 in 365 batters faced. So there is some upside here. There's no doubt about that. And against righties, a bunch of these Yankee bats do have high strikeout rates. So I think you could see, I think this could be somewhat surprising, but at the same time, I put it like this. If this is an 8-game slate, Scherzer at 8,600 probably definitely still gets ownership, but he's not nearly as popular as he is today. The problem today is he almost feels like he should be a contrarian play, but because of that price tag, he's not. So, everything we say is, a lot of people might not even process it the same way. Like, all right, he's great against righties, this and that. There's a lot of upside, a lot of strikeouts in this lineup. A lot of people might just say, he's 8,600. I'm playing him anyway.
Which I think is perfectly fine. And that's, it's, you and I talk about it a lot, that you can go into as much detail as you want to, talking about lineups and pitch types and all of that. At the end of the day, this is still a game about pricing and ownership, depending on what formats you're playing. So when you get a pitcher with this kind of upside and this kind of ability at that price point, it kind of negates a lot of the risk, because even if he does get touched up for a home run or two, as long as they're not a couple of 3-run shots or something like that, he's still going to strike out enough guys, most likely, that it shouldn't really matter all that much.
Judge and Stanton are what, 30+% K rate guys against same-handed pitchers?
Yeah, and if you look even a little bit, like if you do look a little bit deeper into the pitch types, Scherzer basically against righties is just a fastball slider guy, and obviously has a really good slider. You look at the good or the best right-handed hitters in this lineup. Aaron Judge, since 2018, 39.6% swinging strike percentage against right-handed sliders. Gary Sanchez is at 31.5%. Stanton's at 41.2%. Torres is at 27.3%. So, again, those guys have a ton of power, and if Scherzer makes a mistake, they'll take advantage of it. But there's a very clear path to how Scherzer racks up strikeouts here.
Yeah, and leading off, you got Aaron Hicks. He struck out 29% of the time in 171 plate appearances against righties last year. So, bottom line, this could be a spot where Scherzer gets blown up a little bit, but it could also be a spot where he dominates. He really struggled in his limited opportunities in this abbreviated spring training, gave up 11 runs in 11 innings, 10 earned, and still had 16 strikeouts. I don't think it's anything to be worried about at all, but it's in my opinion, it's a boom or bust spot. Unfortunately, it's a 2-game slate, so everyone's going to be on him anyway.
One thing I did, you mentioning his spring numbers reminded me of it. It's not something that I'm personally putting any stock in, but I did catch. I think it was his most recent start for the Nats, was televised here, and he was sitting like 92. So most likely it was just him getting his work in, and then getting off the field. But take it for whatever it's worth, that he was clearly not throwing as hard as normal.
If Scherzer comes out and he's throwing 92 tonight in the first inning, it's going to be a problem.
Right. I think that, the massive favorite is that he comes out throwing exactly like he normally does, though. Exactly.
That's why I'm saying you really can't think about that too much. I'll take a look at it if there's something glaring. And like you said, sometimes, if you go through an extended or a full length spring training and you're at the end and your velocity's still down, or your control's still miserable, or mechanics look different, then that's a conversation we can have. But with Scherzer, I'll buy it when I see it. And as of now, I'm going to assume he comes back out throwing high 90s, like mid to high 90s, like he always does. What about Garrett Cole, though? You have somebody in Cole who is very expensive for a good reason. Strikes out 44% of lefties, 11-4 on FanDuel, 29% ownership. You hop over to DraftKings, you've got Garrett Cole at 54% ownership with a $10,000 price tag, which is kind of interesting. All of the pitchers here, I'd say, to some extent, are priced down a little bit. We'll get to Kershaw in a while, but less ownership on Garrett Cole, and a lot of that probably, Adam, is because Scherzer's so cheap, because Kershaw's so cheap, because the LA Dodger bats are so expensive. That very, very popular build is going to be Kershaw, Scherzer, LA Dodgers stack against Johnny Cueto.
Yeah, and I think that it shouldn't be too difficult to get to Cole, because, especially on the two pitcher sites, because the SP2s or the pitchers not named Cole are so inexpensive that you're not really spending that much salary there. So, I think that it does make it easy enough to get him into lineups. I think that the Nats have enough power that they can do some damage to him. I think there should be at least a little bit of concern with him going to the new team. We know that he made drastic improvements when he went to the Astros. I expect him to carry those over, but obviously there's some chance that they go away or at least, he slides back a little bit. You also have a downgrade with Gary Sanchez catching, who is at times just comical to watch try and frame pitches. So, maybe a little bit of regression here for Cole going to the new team. And it's not like it's the easy matchup against the Nats, especially in terms of strikeouts. They added Starlin Castro to the lineup, who's a low strikeout guy. You have Turner and Eaton at the top, who don't strike out much. Howie Kendrick is tough to strike out. Kurt Suzuki is tough to strike out. The bottom of this order is pretty favorable for Cole, with Stevenson and Robles in particular, but a pretty tough lineup to strike out, some power in it. I don't have a problem with Cole's price tag, but I do agree with Alex's top stack tool has Scherzer actually as having a higher percentage of being a top 2 pitcher on the slate than Cole.
Yeah, I like it. Now, Josh and I had this similar conversation on the strategy show. I raised the concern of Gary Sanchez, and normally if it's a league average catcher, it's whatever. But Gary Sanchez is very bad. As you stated, comically bad at framing pitches. And that's something that can get you into some trouble. Now, Josh brought up the point that, well, a lot of it's swinging strikes for Cole. And you're right, but he also has a 35.5% called plus swinging strike rate. So this is somebody that will get strikeouts catch you looking and does, rely on getting strikes called, at least to help him. You got to have at least decent catching to be racking up a 44% strikeout rate against any handedness of hitters. So I don't want to assume that it's going to hurt him a ton, but I think we both agree it's not going to help Garrett Cole having Gary Sanchez behind the plate.
Right. It's just one of those things that you don't want to overstate it, because it's just it's one small data point when you're talking about a very good, one of the best pitchers in the league. Gary Sanchez isn't going to make him bad, but he's not going to make him any better. And so it's something that I don't expect to help him. I don't think that it changes a whole lot though.
Yeah, actually FanDuel got a notification for FanDuel Sportsbook, and they were boosting odds on his strikeout prop tonight. What do you think his prop was before they boosted the odds for 10 plus strikeouts?
So what was the line?
Yeah.
Plus 140?
Yeah, 150. 150. Which I think goes to show you how ridiculous of a pitcher he really is. Like, you get 140, 150 on anybody to go like above 10 strikeouts against this Nationals team. Look, this is a Nats team that they're not a super high strikeout team. Juan Soto strikes out a decent amount, or at least enough against righties, and he's out of the lineup. What would you say, league average against righties as far as strikeouts go? Around 20%?
Probably below.
You think so?
As far as the team, yeah.
Okay. What about hitters on either side? We can start with the New York Yankees against Washington. Look, we already said it. Max Scherzer is very good, and he's very, very good against righties. Now, you do have a couple lefties in this lineup or switch hitters. Aaron Hicks, switch hitter leading off here. Then you've got Judge, Torres, Stanton, all 3 righties. Brett Gardner batting 5th. Then Gary Sanchez, Luke Voigt, Urshela, and Tyler Wade, another lefty. So they have 3 lefties scattered throughout at the top, middle, and the back of this lineup. Are you targeting any of these guys on a 2-game slate where we're going to have to be a little bit different in some spots?
I think Hicks leading off looks pretty good. Like, he's really the only power bat from the left side in this lineup. Gardner, obviously he can run into one occasionally, but normally not really a power hitter. So I think Hicks would be the guy that stands out. And then, obviously it goes without saying that those right-handed power bats, if Scherzer makes a mistake, they'll take advantage. But normally the first and really only place that you're looking against Scherzer is for left-handed power, and that pretty much is just Hicks here.
This lineup definitely starts looking a little bit less World Series-like, and you're I always want to say you're a Nats fan, but you're not, right? You're a Baltimore Orioles fan?
Yeah, Orioles fan.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But he's on the Angels now, Anthony Rendon, and Juan Soto is out. So you take their two best hitters, sideline one, trade the other, and now that you look from top to bottom, like, dude, Starlin Castro, Howie Kendrick. I hate this term. They say professional hitter. Howie Kendrick's a guy that can get on base. He can drive in some runs, but he's not scaring anybody. Eric Thames comes in. Yes, the guy's got some power, but he also strikes out at a monumentally high rate, particularly against lefties, but righties too. Suzuki is Drupal Cabrera, Andrew Stevenson, Victor Robles. Like, if I told you that lineup was a World Series winner, you'd say, all right, well, they better have the best pitching staff in the world. And to some extent they do, but that's not pretty. No,
it's not. These two lineups are kind of like opposites to me. You look at the Yankees and you just have all this power, especially 1 through 7 or 1 through 8. You have all this power, but a ton of strikeouts in there. This Nats lineup, nowhere near as much power. I mean, if you're looking for guys with power, Suzuki has some, Thames has some, Kendrick has some, Turner has some, but overall, it's not a lot of power in this lineup. There's no one in this lineup that you look at in the same light that you would look at an Aaron Judge or a Giancarlo Stanton. But when you go through the strikeout percentages, they're just not really there. I mean, there's so many guys in this lineup that are 20% or below. You have Kendrick at 14.5% against right-handed pitching since the start of 2017. Eaton's at 15.9. Turner doesn't strike out much. It's Suzuki's at 10.4%. So it's a lineup that, while I don't think they're as imposing in terms of if you make one mistake with a couple guys on base, you're down 3 runs. It's a lineup that can still be really, really frustrating to take pitchers against, and a lineup that still, from a stack perspective, especially on a site like FanDuel where home runs are weighted a bit less and runs and RBIs are weighted higher, they carry a little bit of appeal there because they're a team that can just string so many consecutive hits together.
So on FanDuel, you've got and you can check our top stack tool out at Awesemo.com. You want to get 50% off your first month of all of your MLB content, everything premium, projections, ownership, top stack tool, top pitcher tool, lineups builder, and all of our premium articles. Use the promo code when you check out. Use the sign up code or coupon code Manfred, like Rob Manfred, MANFRED. It gets you 50% off. It's only $25 for the whole month. I would personally suggest, though, you use the promo code RESTART when you check out, because that'll get you everything 50% off, $45. Every single sport we have, projections, ownership, top stack tools for all of our stuff, all of our premium articles, everything for $45 for the next 31 days. That, I think, is the better bang for your buck. So check it out. Go to Awesemo.com/join. And when you do sign up, hit us up in the Slack chat. Going all day long, all sports, talking DFS and the like. So Awesemo.com/join. Manfred gets you 50% off the MLB Awesemo Plus package. You want to get 50% off everything, use Restart for $45. Okay, so the top stack tool has, for FanDuel though, has Washington with a 17.9% top stack probability, which isn't that bad. Like, it's not great, but the Yankees are at 27, Dodgers are at 39, even the San Francisco Giants are at 15.9%. So I guess Alex's top stack tool agrees with your analysis here.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously they're going to be somewhat inflated because on average you'd be at 25%, but yeah.
What I'm saying though is, when you look at how ugly that is, I'm surprised it's even at 18%. So, I would think the Dodgers would be higher than that, but they're not. Ownership, Washington basically getting the same ownership as the New York Yankees. So, God, I guess the Yankees, the price is going to make things very difficult. So it's all a matter of what you're willing to spend on pitcher, and we'll get to that in the next game.
On FanDuel.
On FanDuel.
Yeah.
Yeah, what are you saying? No. On DraftKings, everybody's free.
Yeah, I'll say the Nats are like 2/3 the ownership of the Yankees on DraftKings.
Yeah. No, so that's actually, I'm glad you brought that up. So on FanDuel, ownership for the Dodgers is 35.5%. For the Yankees and Washington, it's 23%, and then 19% for San Francisco. For DraftKings, 35% for the Dodgers, 24% for the Yankees, 17% for Washington, and 23% for San Francisco. You're seeing a few of those San Francisco bats coming in really cheap and filling in spots that are particularly weak. To wrap this game up right now, you've got Washington, New York, no Jose. Oh my God, dude! That was the craziest thing. I just completely 100% blanked on his name. I still can't remember.
Juan Soto.
Juan Soto. Holy shit! Oh, that's what happens when you do 3 sports at once.
Yeah, and when you haven't done this particular sport in 10 months now?
I called him Jose.
Well, then I was going through like, who the hell is named Jose that he can't remember his name?
I've mentioned his name 100 times. That was I short circuited. Wow. Anyway, no Juan Soto to the coronavirus and a pretty watered down lineup. On the other side, everyone for the Yankees is pretty much healthy, man. Just look through this entire lineup. Hicks, Judge, Torres, Stanton, Gardner. Sanchez is batting 6. Luke Voigt batting 7. They've got so much power from top to bottom. What are you doing on both sites with these stacks?
Yeah, so like I had said, I think the Nats are more valuable on FanDuel just because of the scoring there. I think it's more conducive to the Nats. It's pretty unlikely with the pitchers going today. It's pretty unlikely that any team erupts for a bunch of home runs. But in general, this Nats team is much less likely to be the one that hits 6 home runs in a game than the Yankees. But they'll steal bases. They can string together hits, score runs. So I think the Nats are a much better stack on FanDuel than DraftKings. I think the Yankees on DraftKings are better than they are on FanDuel because just when you look at the types of hitters they have, you're more likely to get a few home runs kind of spread out throughout the lineup than just a bunch of hits and a bunch of driving each other in. I think that Hicks stands out as the really only left-handed power bat in the lineup for the Yankees as well.
All right, so we've got San Francisco, we've got the Dodgers. This game is shockingly different than the first one, at least in terms of competitiveness. It's baseball, anything can happen, but the Dodgers are 284 money line favorites. San Francisco plus 253. Dodgers had the highest run total of all 4 teams on this slate at 5.5, and San Francisco has the lowest of all 4 teams at 3.1. We'll obviously kick it off here with Clayton Kershaw. He's coming in at $7,700 on DraftKings. Now, listen, Adam, I get it. He's not the same pitcher he once was, and I don't think anybody would argue that. You can't. But he's still a very good pitcher. He's still their opening day pitcher, which doesn't mean anything, but he's still very, very talented, and he's still got some filthy stuff. Also, the San Francisco Giants lineup looks nothing like somebody's starting day lineup should look like. There's so many reasons at 7,700 to just say, I don't care if Clayton Kershaw isn't the same guy as he once was. He's the biggest favorite on the slate against a team with the lowest total on the slate, with guys like Slater and Yastrzemski and Hunter Pence and Darren Ruff expected to be in the lineup. Like 7,700 is an insane price on DraftKings.
Yeah, Kershaw's weird too because he's one of those pitchers that I feel like the perception of him in the DFS industry, at least, kind of like overcorrected, because for a while it was like people were treating him like he was still the same guy that he was a few years ago and just rostering him no matter what the matchup was, no matter what the price was, it doesn't matter, which was clearly a mistake. But then it kind of turned into, Clayton Kershaw is washed. He's just because he's not as good as he was at one point, he's just not good at all, is kind of like what it seemed like people started to think. Last year, he still struck out 27% of right-handed hitters with an expected WOBA just at 299. He struck out 25.5% of lefties with an xWOBA at 274. He's still a good pitcher. He's just not the best pitcher in baseball anymore. And when you go up against a team that looks like this Giants team does, being an above-average pitcher is pretty much all that you need, especially if you're going to be priced down like he is. He's not a $7,700 pitcher based on his talent level. And then you factor in that it's an above-average matchup here. There's a lot of righties in this lineup, most likely. You're probably only going to have Yastrzemski as the lone lefty. But, as I mentioned, he's still fine against right-handed hitters. He had a higher strikeout percentage against righties last year. So that combined with the salary, I'm still just not concerned about Kershaw here.
Neither am I. He gave up some hard contact, fine, but he had a called plus swinging strike rate of 30%, which really is not bad at all. Across the board, he was solid. The only thing somewhat troublesome about Kershaw, but is mitigated by this matchup, he gave up 23 home runs to righties. But even that, who's going to hit these home runs? I'm not saying it can't be done, right? And it's not Oracle Park. It's Dodger Stadium, which is a little bit friendlier to hitters. It's as neutral a park really as you get. But there is not a lot of threatening power, even from the right side of the plate. Are you worried about Darren Ruff? Yeah, he's got power if he can make contact. Wilmer Flores is a guy that, for a few years there hit lefties particularly well, but kind of fell off. Donovan Solano, Brandon Crawford. Sure, you can argue he's a reverse splits guy. Fine, but whatever. Tyler Heineman, where's the power coming from?
Right. When you look at this lineup and you're trying to look for, who do you